What's
You
that?
beat me here tonight? I knew I'd make problems. How's it going, David?
Test to that. And sometimes they'll have like a sponsor when somebody else is like,
12 o'clock, when it got 6 o'clock.
Played, aren't I? Richard, how you doing? Garrett?
Kind of. I ran out of money. I mean, I'm already working my butt off. Yeah, we.
Charlie working late.
We took that place apart, and now it's sitting there kind of half demoed and waiting on a guy to put in a dock. And then my accountant told me I owed some taxes.
How many
I
we
know,
got?
right? Yeah. I gotta postpone some of those.
Charlie, you gonna do the invocation?
can.
We don't have a deputy here tonight. We need a deputy here tonight, my goodness.
Somebody needs to be on.
What's the day? 22nd? April the 22nd. At this time, we call the Walton County Zoning Board of Justice meeting to order. If you would, please stand as we have the invocation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Charlie, if you would, do the invocation, please.
Dear Lord, thank you for the opportunity to live in this great nation. Please watch over us and guide us here tonight to do what's best for our county and our citizens. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. We do appreciate all the board members. I do believe we have a full board. It's always good to have a full board, and we like to thank the members for being here. We appreciate the hard work that Karen does to make this meeting possible, and we thank our attorney, Hayward Dice, for his presence, along with the planning department, and Mr. Hall, I believe, is representing the planning department now. Is that correct, Mr. Hall? Yes, Mr. Chair. We're glad to have you. I understand that we have 2 appeals. Somebody want to tell me what's going on with the appeals or the requests on the appeals?
Mr. Chairman, Steve Hall, Land Use Attorney, Walton County Attorney's Office. We have gotten 3 attorneys to agree on something, and that is that we need another month, at least 2 weeks, to be prepared for the appeal hearing. So in conversation today between the attorney for the petitioner or appellant and myself and the representative of the property owner, we decided to joint motion for continuance or request for continuance would be in order.
And that's the number 4 item, Kaiya,
Number 3 and number 4.
number 3 and number 4.
Yes, sir.
4 and 5.
4 and 5.
Oh. Okay.
So we have 2 appeals on the same issue.
They're tied together inextricably, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to continue.
What is it? There was a request to move it to May 17th, and there was a request for
Yes,
May
I had,
27th.
and I was going to be there. I did promise the appellant that we would request that the board would move it to a time certain so that they would not have to re-advertise again to all the local residents. And so by default, we would ask to go to the May meeting,
Which is May the 27th.
the 27th. I also promised that I would at least poll the board and ask for you to consider the possibility of a special meeting to handle just those 2 items. We anticipate that it'll be 2 to 3 hours. Mr. Chairman, it's a lot like the Kaiya appeal that this board heard in 2017. Same attorneys, same appellants, same development. So I looked at the amount of time that it took to handle that one, and I think that was handled in a special meeting as well.
One of those that the judge decided that you didn't do your job in preparing it for the, so. This is,
Take offense to that, of course. No, this is not one that was, now there is a, property to the Kaiya development. That one is appealed.
is that,
That one's pending in front of the brief. Probably over a year and a half. Contact.
And there's actually another separate circuit court action not involved with anything that the county has done between the two parties.
Karen, what do we have on the agenda on May the 25th or 27th? Do you know anything that's coming up? When is the deadline for them to submit? Today? So you should know today if we have much on the May agenda.
And I spoke with Stephen about that earlier today, and he said they'd had a significant number of pre-apps, but no applications submitted as of today.
Do you want to explain that?
Means we might have a skinny agenda for May.
If they did the pre-app and they didn't file it today, then they can't come back, right?
That's correct.
Go ahead, Stephen.
So could add Thursday.
How many applications, do you, pre-applications, is that for variances?
For variances, conditional uses.
That may or may not show up in May. You want to have this on the week of the 17th? Is that what you asking?
Well, the first date that a special meeting could be held would be after the 10th, to allow for advertising for the special meeting.
That Thursday, I don't know.
Third Thursday, I have a meeting. Let's see, the 20th. I just send here today at the meeting. We get started at 5 o'clock. We usually out here by 7:30. If it's 8:39, I don't have a problem. How about the board?
Powers through it.
That same,
I can go either way.
Order some pizza.
Personally,
David, what do you think?
I won't be here the week.
We need a full board.
I'd say do it all.
Paul? Sometimes it's real difficult to have two board meetings in the month and have
I
that
agree.
many board members. We just send it, let's do it all one night.
so Mr. Chairman, the motion would be then for a continuance to the May 27th regular ZBOA meeting at 5 o'clock or as soon thereafter.
Get a motion.
I'll make a motion to continue items 4 and 5 on the agenda to May 27th.
Second.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you. I think we got to back up a little bit and do the swearing in of the witnesses. Anyone here tonight plan to speak before this board, if you would, please stand, raise your right hand, and swear that the testimony you give be the truth. Y'all not going to speak? Y'all just If you're gonna have anything to say before this board tonight, please stand, raise your right hand.
Do you all swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
So help you God.
Thank you. Have I missed anything else?
Hayward's announcements.
Yeah, I don't have any announcements.
I don't even wanna ask him no more. Judge is gonna say that y'all didn't make the right motion and second.
They'll probably get in trouble with this because of it. So.
First item on the agenda is the Varley Petition for variance request. Who's here on behalf of the Varley? Dunlap and Shipman, oh my goodness. Melissa, you've been out for a while. Where you been? Pardon me? Oh, okay.
We try to keep her board.
Kaufman,
Varley.
Robert Kaufman,
Kaufman, yes, sir.
how you tonight?
I'm doing well, thank you.
What you up to tonight?
Can you hear me now? There we go. All right. We are seeking a setback variance on the side setbacks and the rear setback of the property in 32 Seawalk Circle, which is Lot 11 in Seagrove. And the Varleys are seeking that variance to maintain the property at its existing footprint. They seek to expand it upward. They want to build a third and a fourth floor, or if necessary, if dictated by the structural engineer, rebuild their home in its existing footprint. The home's been there since 1995, is in conformance with the community plat, with the community covenants, the setbacks set forth therein, and is in a location that is typical of the community, which I'll be talking about at length, which is to have a 10-foot rear setback, 5-foot side setbacks, because it is embedded in the community covenants as well as the community plat. A bit of housekeeping. You, of course, do have the staff report. There are a number of exhibits attached to the staff report, and we intend to rely on those. To back up with me here tonight, Melissa Ward, planning consultant with Dunlap and Shipman, Mr. Varley, and also architect Greg Jazzieri are here, especially if the board has any questions for any of us on architectural matters, as well as the owner's intended use of the property or the history of the development. At this time, I do not necessarily plan to call them as witnesses because I believe all the evidence necessary for the granting of the variance is in fact in the documents that are attached to that staff report, and I would ask if those be accepted into evidence.
So moved. Petitioner Exhibit A.
And briefly to go through that, after the staff report itself, you do have a location map, you have the property appraiser's parcel ID card, there is a site plan and proposed floor plans drawn by Mr. Jazzieri. You have a survey of the property. You also have the project narrative signed by the property owners, which goes into a little bit more depth of the history in particular than I plan to tonight, but it is there in the project narrative. You also have the Seawalk Community Plat and Covenants that I will be referring to. There's some site photographs that begin, I believe, on page 64 or 65, if you'd want to look at those to help orient yourself. There's also an agreement between the Seawalk developer and the Board of County Commissioners that I will explain. And then also you have your typical floodplain, environmental, and South Walton Fire District reports. So to get back to what this variance request is, the Varleys plan to expand their home with construction on a third and a fourth floor without any change to the building footprint as it's been in place since the home was built in '95. Now, if the variance is granted and the structural engineer says that the foundations need to be substantially renovated, they may end up having to take out part of the first and second floor and rebuild those as well. But the intention and the first option is simply to build up the third and the fourth floor at the exact same footprint. The variance request, it's not asking for a carte blanche from 15 feet to 10 feet on the rear and from 7.5 to 5 on the sides. It's only where the existing construction goes into the setbacks that the variance is being requested. And what you have, starting with the rear of the property, you do have one corner of the primary residential structure on the south rear corner that goes into the county standard 15-foot setback. It goes to the 10-foot mark. You also have an existing pool and part of the pool deck that are also within that 10 to 15-foot area. There is a small area of the pool, and this predates the Varley's ownership of the property, that actually extends to about 9 feet from the property line, and part of the proposal and the plan is, when there's a renovation, is to remove that and make sure that it adheres to the standard 10-foot setback that this community adheres to. So that's the rear setback. Then on the north side, the house is built parallel to the property line, 5 feet down from the property line. So the variance request is to be able to continue to use and expand upon the existing structure right at that 5-foot line along the buildable length of the north property line, where the house is now. And then on the rear, it's the front corner of the on the other side, the front corner of the residence goes to about 2.5 feet. It's actually the porch, I believe, into that setback. So you have a 2.5-foot request on one side, 2.5-foot request on the other, and 5 foot on the rear.
You're referencing A-101? Is that the exhibit you kind of going off of?
Page 14, I'd have to look to see what the
I don't
number
see
is
no
there.
page numbers on this.
They're very
thing.
small. They're at the bottom. It's page 14. It's a survey prepared by Volker Surveying.
What is this A-101?
Survey's marked as Exhibit D on the table of contents. 101, that is, those are the plans drawn by the architect, Mr. Jazzieri. And those also reflect the existing construction when you look at the first floor, but those also have a proposed design on the third and the fourth floor. So the setback, the survey's on the very next page after those 2 pages you're referring to, Chairman. So the existing structure in LDC terms, it's a legal nonconformity. It is a legal structure. It does not need any variance to remain, and the only reason why the property owner, who's not proposing to change the setbacks at all, the only reason why the property owner actually needs a variance to go up is because of Section 115.04 of the Land Development Code. That states that no nonconforming use or sign or non-complying structure shall be enlarged upon, expanded, or extended unless the alteration is in full compliance with the requirements of the code. And I think it's important to note that it's, I think, a little bit borderline, frankly, whether a proposed expansion up that does not increase the nonconformity actually falls within the provisions of this code. This is preventing further nonconformities or the expansion of a nonconformity. But it's a position of the planning department that because it's a non-complying structure, because they want to increase the vertical use within those same established setbacks, that does require the variance, hence why we're here tonight. I'll get to, in a few minutes, of course, there are the 7 elements that you all are very familiar with that are required to grant the variance, the history of the Seawalk subdivision, and this particular property is very important to establishing the basis for several of those. So at the time this house was built in 1995, and really until about 5 years ago, the building permit review process in the residential preservation land use category, which is where this is located, prior to 1996, I think it was the NPA, the Neighborhood Preservation Area. It was for established platted subdivisions. And the county in the building review process and the permitting process respected and deferred the county standard setbacks to the prior recorded community covenants. So we have neighborhoods like Seawalk where you have a 15-foot county, but they had a 10-foot rear in Seawalk, 7.5-foot side, it's 5 foot in Seawalk. And the construction throughout Seawalk, I don't know if it's literally every single home, but substantially all the homes are built to the 10-foot mark in the rear setback, 5-foot marks on the side setbacks. You don't have to take my word for that. That's actually in the staff report. And to read from the staff report, it's referring to the Varley residents here, quote, like many, if not all, of the other lots in the small subdivision of Seawalk, it was constructed with 5-foot side setbacks and a 10-foot rear setback. So that is the development pattern for the community based on the covenants, based on the plat. Turning to the plat, that is Exhibit G in the packet. It's on pages 46 to 47. It does not specifically use the word setback. It does not specifically identify a 10-foot rear setback. But what it does do is it identifies a 10-foot easement in the rear. And that is the line to which all of these homes have been built, is that 10-foot rear line. The community covenants state that the rear setback is established in the plat. So it's pretty clear when you read those together, when you read the fact that all these homes were permitted to be built to that 10-foot mark, that the 10-foot mark is the rear setback for the Seawalk subdivision. So that's the rear setback component. On the side setback component.
Hang on a minute. What's the 10-foot easement? What is that easement?
Well, presumably it would also be for drainage purposes. That would be typical
Not a road
utility
easement.
drainage. It's not specified. The plat does not state the purposes of the easement. The covenants, however, don't state a specific rear setback. They say the rear setback is as established in the plat. In the plat, you have the 10-foot easement, and then you have the actual development of all the homes that are built to that 10-foot mark. Not necessarily the entire primary structure, but that's including accessory structures such as your pools.
Robert, the covenants say that the front, side, and rear property lines are set forth in the plat requirements, and the plat doesn't show any front, side, or rear setbacks at all.
Not specifically, no.
So where did they come up with the 5-foot setbacks when they started developing?
I do not have the answer to that other than in the covenants themselves, in the amendment to the covenants, which follows the initial covenants. It's actually a corrective amendment to put back in that it was intended to say 5-foot side setbacks in the original covenants.
They did put that in the amendment?
Correct. That's in the next, it's the next document in your packet. It is Exhibit I, number 11. I think the page numbers in the table of contents are off several pages, which is why I'm not always citing the page numbers.
Get back to the 10-foot easement. It's just an easement. Nobody knows what it's for.
Somebody may know what it's for. I do not know what it's for. But what I know is that the covenants do refer to the plat containing the rear setback, and you have the consistent development within the community as it's actually been built out at that 10-foot mark.
Hang on a minute. Melissa, you know what the easement's for? Is it a road easement, utility easement? Is it a...
It's not a road easement. This development is a subset inside of Gulf Shore Manor, and so on both sides of it, there are public right-of-ways that go down. So it's not a road easement. Potentially, it could have been a stormwater facility for the roadways and for the subdivision so that neither one of them were flooded. In addition to that, when it was actually platted, it potentially could have been a 10-foot landscape buffer that they just put a easement line around, so that the easement itself barred anybody from doing any construction in it. It is not labeled out clearly, but it's not a road because each of these lots butt up and against a right-of-way that is now a beach access and parking for that beach access.
Could be a utility.
Potentially could be utilities for those units. If you look at the plat, you'll notice that they have, like, for instance, on the other side where the cul-de-sac, there's a public park in the middle, and on the other side, there's a lot that's a wider lot but shorter, and then there's 3 beach lots, and there's that same easement 10 feet in front and behind. That's actually an access, like a pedestrian and driveway access easement. So they used it just as, don't touch this area, don't build in it, and we'll use it however we choose. In this particular case, this one ended up being for access down to and around those properties. I think that we can't speculate as to what the developer was intending because the easement is very nondescriptive.
It's not in the covenants, but it's
Rear easement.
isolated to this development.
It's just for this development. It's not on every development there.
Okay, go ahead.
Beyond the plat and the covenants, there's an extra wrinkle unique to Seawalk because the development of Seawalk's actually how Walton County acquired the property that's now the Bramble Grove development. And when we're talking about these reduced setbacks, we think that's relevant. We don't have the minutes that specifically say this. I want to be upfront about that. But the configuration here is you have Seawalk Phase 1 on the west side, you have Seawalk Phase 2 on the east side, and then you have what's now Bramble Grove in the middle. And the developer agreement signed by the Board of County Commissioners, and that is number 13 in your table of contents. Again, page 75 plus or minus. I don't know that that's actually accurate. That approved an amended version of the Seawalk Phase 1 plat in return for dedication of what became the Bramble Grove property for use as a park. So what we see is a compact neighborhood of small lots, and we see that BCC approving that development plan. And what I suspect, and this is speculation, is that you had a dedication of land to the county in return for some permissiveness on the size of the lots and the setbacks to make them more buildable on the small properties. And then you have the entire community that's been built out according to that 10-foot rear and that 5-foot side. That would not be an unusual position. Again, I don't have the minutes that contain that conversation. So turning then to some of the specific 7 elements that are required findings in 11603 of the code, to combine a few of them together, you have harmony with the land use category, harmony with the adjacent properties. Will this impair light or air access? Will it confer any special privileges? The request is clearly in harmony with the land use category. It's residential preservation. It's a residential use. It's clearly in harmony with the rest of Seawalk. As I've been saying, the community's built out to the 10-foot rear, 5-foot side. It would actually be not granting the variance and requiring a more restrictive setback that would not be in harmony with the community. If the variance is granted, the whole purpose of asking for the variance is, again, to allow the property owners to expand their residence upward to get some additional height on the property. It would not be an outlier or inconsistent in terms of height either. It's actually, this residence is actually an outlier right now because it's 1,600 square feet and change, conditioned space, 2-story residence, and a community full of 3- and 4-story residences that are significantly larger, which you can also see in several of those pictures. We do have the letter of non-objection, ticking off the safety boxes here from the South Walton Fire Department. Had no objection. That letter is in the review packet exhibit number 16 in the table of contents. And this isn't going to impair light or air. Again, we already have a structure at the 10-foot mark and the 5-foot mark that's, there's no further impairment. It's already there. It's just going up a little bit further. And it's not granting any special privileges to the applicant. Again, this is the privilege here is to be able to use the property and use the community the same way all the neighbors have. As far as the required finding of unique circumstances, that's largely tied back to the unique development history of the property. Again, this is a home, a community full of homes that have been built with county approval of the plat, and I suspect that developer agreement according to reduced setbacks. The setbacks that are being requested, they're consistent with the plat to the extent we're going to consider that 10-foot quote-unquote easement to also be the rear setback. It is consistent with the covenants, which through that amendment specify 5-foot rear, or rather 5-foot side setbacks. This is also unique because of what the Varleys are talking about doing. Again, it's expanding upwards. It has nothing to do with the nonconformity that we're actually having to come and ask for the variance. They're not asking to expand the use of the setbacks. And it's unique in the sense that if they're going to be prohibited from this, it's really because there was a change in interpretation, not any legislative change by the BCC, but a director's change in interpretation about 5 years ago that we're no longer going to defer to the established community setbacks after we already have a built-out community in place. That also ties into another required finding, which is unnecessary hardship. It's unnecessary hardship here because requiring application of the county's standard setbacks, it's going to do several things. It's going to actually, well, first off, it's going to contravene at least the side setbacks and the covenants, arguably the plat. It's going to basically prohibit what would be a consistent development with the community by continuing to go up and use the boundary of the residence at the 5-foot and the 10-foot mark. And actually forcing, if there's, to the extent there's a rebuild, it's going to force construction to a narrower footprint that's not going to be aligned with the rest of the community. This would also significantly diminish the buildable area on the property. It's a 0.06 acre, I think 0.064 acre parcel. It's about 2,700 square feet, so it's going to further diminish the buildable area on the property. And it effectively, in terms of the expansion, it's arbitrarily acting as almost a height restriction, a 2-story height restriction, which, again, in a community full of 3- and 4-story residences, all in a situation where the county's not getting any benefit out of it. The setbacks aren't being corrected here. There's no further impairment of the setbacks. All you're doing is artificially limiting the residence in a way that, it's surrounded by 3- and 4-story residences of perhaps twice the size, and this one residence is being limited. As far as being necessary for reasonable use of the land, I think some of what I just discussed certainly plays into that. But I think the key thing here, which may be a little bit different than the staff interpretation, is that reasonable use is more than just being able to have some type of usable structure on the property. An owner's ability to use their land consistent with the established and approved development pattern from the community in which they purchased, that's a part of reasonable use. That's why the variance is necessary. Being able to expand what is a very small, certainly by anywhere near 30A standards at 1,600 square feet, a very small residence to meet the needs of a family, that's part of reasonable use. In the Varley's case, they were a 3-person family when they purchased this property. They're now a 5-person family, and a 3-bedroom house, which is what this is, doesn't fit quite the same way. Well, part of reasonable use, if you're not violating other provisions of the Land Development Code, which we don't think that they're doing here, nothing else prevents them from building on an addition. Part of reasonable use is being able to expand your property to meet the needs of your family. And denying the variance would actually be directing construction, again, if there's a rebuild within the narrower footprint that's inconsistent, and I think avoiding that result is necessary to allow that for there to be reasonable use. So, just to wrap it up, and I would certainly invite the board to ask any questions you may have of any of us who are here. Seawalk strikes me, having done one of these last fall, as you did, it strikes me a little bit like over in Blue Mountain Beach. You have the White Cliffs HOA, community covenants, and setbacks that are inconsistent with the county setbacks, and you keep having property owners come to you to request variances. It would be great if they'd been more clear in the original development plan. We wouldn't be here. Or if there was some mechanism to have a blanket easement or rather variance for the community, then it would be great. But we're not there. Property owners such as the Varleys have to come and ask you for this variance.
I think you've done a good job selling. Anybody have any questions, anything? One thing I do have is the parking. Is there adequate parking?
I believe so. Mr. Jazzieri, would you like to speak to that?
Yes. State your name for the record.
And you were sworn in earlier, sir?
Yes.
Okay.
My name is Greg Jazzieri. Yeah, so this is right now a 3-bedroom house. We're going to convert it to a 4-bedroom house. So we'll have most likely 2 parking spaces. We can have up to 4 parking spaces. So, yeah, we'll have plenty of parking.
You the
It looks like
engineer?
you have 3 parking spaces on there.
We have 3 potentially. Yeah, this is really just very schematic. We're really only required to have 2. This will be considered if it's a part of a vacation rental on the program, we'll only need 2 parking spaces. So I'm not sure which way they're going to go, whether it's going to be a rental or for their primary in the future. But yeah, right now we'll have parking for, actually what's shown right now is 2, but we can get 3 parking
You
spaces.
the engineer?
I'm the designer.
You won't know if the slab will support it until you tear it down?
Most likely, we've dealt with homes that were built in '95, and the footers aren't designed to do 3 or 4 stories. So most likely, if we have to keep the existing structure, we'll have to undermine the existing footer or put some type of additional
So
support.
basically, you're gonna tear it all down and start over?
Gonna tear it down and start over. There's no engineer's gonna certify that foundation.
It's difficult. I mean, if we have to, I know that's gonna be the hard part. And I told my client that, we'll try to salvage it.
Mine, or what did you say?
No, I told my client that we'll try
okay.
we'll try to salvage the property if we can, but most likely once we get the structural engineer involved, they'll require.
Basically,
more
what
demo.
you asked them for is to tear everything down and build it back into footprint.
Just use the setbacks for the sub.
Pardon me?
They just want to use the original setbacks for the subdivision.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, any other concerns? We'll give you the opportunity to come back up.
Thank you, sir.
let's hear from Stephen. Stephen, what you think?
Good evening, Stephen Schoen, Planning and Development Services. If I could have the staff report entered into record, please.
Go in there.
Thank you. It is staff's contention that the application does not satisfy the hardship requirements of the code. If I can speak specifically on some of these items, the crux of staff's issue is that the variance request is based solely on the applicant's desire and just his desire, right? Today, the applicant could come in and make application to go vertical on that structure, satisfying the current setbacks. That would take, based on my very cursory review of the floor plan, approximately 250 square feet of what's proposed, right? Because it would reduce, yeah, about that. I want to say it was 140-ish, not including the stairwell. If they satisfy the 7.5 on the sides, the rear floor plan, the floor plan at the rear wouldn't be impacted because the actual livable space is not in the setback. It's just from what I can tell, the porch and pool area. So, that being said, it's not satisfying those hardship criteria in staff's opinion.
140 feet per story?
Approximately.
You're talking about 400 feet, 420 feet.
Well, no, the two additional stories. I mean, keeping their original footprint and what they have on the first and second floor, if they add going straight up or going to the current standard setback, it would remove 2.5 feet along the side setback for what they're proposing. So 2.5 by about 41 feet times 2 is what they would be losing, not including the stairwell, like I said.
Has it not been the county's position that when you redevelop on top of an existing structure that you're allowed to use the footprint of the existing structure?
That is not my understanding. I've spoken with some of the other planners in the office that do the permitting for residential structures and accessory structures. And the way they have historically treated it is that any addition to or a new portion would have to meet the current setback. It wouldn't have to be necessarily torn down and rebuilt in the setback, just anything additional would have to meet the current.
So basically, they're asking for a 2.5 foot setback. And you saying they can live up to the 7 foot, and they asking 5, so you're saying 2.5 feet on that north
I
side.
think what he's saying is they're asking for addition for a setback.
Yes, there are existing nonconformities. They can stay that way in perpetuity.
Floors 3 and 4 would have to step back into the
If they
setback.
tear
But
down
that's
the
if they
whole structure.
kept the structure.
That's right. Now, considering that wasn't part of this review, you know, if that's something that they want to propose, you know, that's not something that staff reviewed because that wasn't part of the application.
Yeah, I'm thinking that the hardship is when you cut these lots up into tiny sizes, assuming that you can have a 5 foot setback at the time that they're platted, and then it changes and everything gets significantly smaller. This buildable footprint is microscopic as it is, and then to reduce it, you know, an additional 5 feet across the rear and 2.5 feet on each side makes it a really awkward building footprint. So I think that the application at the time the county did it of the 7.5 foot setbacks to already existing subdivisions is the actual hardship. And
I agree. Anything else, Stephen?
No.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there anyone here in the public that would like to speak either for or against this variance? Are there any letters that has been filed by the neighbors that is opposed to this variance or for this variance? Are there anybody on Zoom that wants to say anything? Does Melissa want to say anything? Is there anything else wants to be said? I hate to ask you to come back up because you just don't know when to quit. But come on back up and cut it short briefly.
All I'd say, if I can stand here, sir, is that primary hardship is the
Thank you. Are you done? You done? Did you look over that survey that Volker did? You think it's
Yes, I've actually read this one carefully.
somewhat right, or
We're okay there, and,
motion to close it public discussion?
One more question for Greg. What does the hatched area right here represent in the corner, south? Yeah, we're gonna remove that. Okay.
Motion to close it public discussion.
Motion to close public discussion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Need a motion.
make a motion, we grant the variance as requested.
Would you like to tie the survey to it? Footprint? Because otherwise they would just have, they can make their footprint bigger. I don't believe the actual as requested said to the footprint.
All the documents we can put in there would be good. You have no problem adding that to your motion, do you?
No, sir, I don't. And the motion was, or actually, the variance, the request was to maintain the present footprint. So to reiterate that or to confirm, I think Mr. McKinley's suggestion is a good one. I would tie the survey to the motion and the footprint as established on said survey.
Second. Discussion. Now you just think why you think it's a hardship.
Do I need to review that? I was just reflecting on the PUD for Draper Lake that has very small building footprints like this. And if the county were to come back and require 7.5-foot setback in that subdivision, it would make a lot of the lots unbuildable. But I do think that had this lot been developed originally at the time that this house was built, if they had built a 4-story house, they would have been grandfathered in with a 4-story house, and they were permitted to build a 4-story house at the time. And so we're just trapped in this awkward moment where they're wanting to highest and best use of that property, which is going to have a phenomenal view, and all the other neighbors are building 4-story houses. And I think they should be entitled to use the setbacks that were in place at the time that the property was developed.
The hardship is the size of the lot, being a small lot, that it was developed at the time with, accepted by the county commissioners, and hardship was imposed by the county when they passed stricter.
Well, it makes a lot of sense that they created a significant amount of public space in the subdivision in exchange for smaller lot sizes and smaller setbacks. So the property gave a public park to the county in exchange for the smaller setbacks.
We covered the hardship, right? Well, no. As long as they tie it to the survey, they can tear it down and rebuild it.
Yeah, as long as they build within that footprint, I believe that they'll be fine, and they can go up.
Anything else? We have a motion, a second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? You receive your variance. Thank you. Next item on the agenda.
DR Horton.
I thought it was Ocean City Estates. Is that number 3? DR Horton. Ocean City. Who's here for DR Horton?
Board, my name is Steve Isaacs. I'll be representing DR Horton for the variance in Ocean Estates.
This one that y'all just built and made a mistake
That's correct.
on purpose?
Not on purpose. No,
What happened?
our surveyor did the survey on it and was incorrect, and we built and we found we were 9.6 inches over the setback, the rear setback on the southwest portion of the house.
Who's your surveyor?
Carter and Clark.
Never heard of them.
Yeah, they're kind of new to us as well, and we're getting used to the way they function. They do it in a box, and they just a little different than what we were used to, and so we continued to build. And when the foundation survey came back, we were over by 9.6.
It's amazing to me. I guess when they go to surveying school, they kind of teaches different methods because every surveyor just can't come up with the same as other surveyors.
I agree,
But
100%.
Mr. Burgess, now he does a good, consistent job. But they're just different, aren't they?
They are different.
You think
They
because
are.
of the instruments,
You
they
get-
use cheaper instruments or something? It just blows my mind. It
I
really
could-
does.
I
Or they
could
just won't be
probably-
different. You think they just won't be different?
I'm sorry.
You think they want to just be different from the other one?
They should all be the same.
Agree.
Yeah,
Mr.
absolutely.
Burgess does a good job.
Yep.
Basically, tell me what you're asking for. I can't find anything in this thing.
I'm sorry.
I think I found it. Palmer, this
24
is,
Palmer Lane, yes, sir.
Yep.
So it's a 25 home development, and on the back property between lot 20 and lot 11, there's like a 40-foot preserve. So we're not into any of the wetland or any of the preserve area. We're just from the rear setback, we were 14.4.
Supposed to be 20 and you 14.2 on one and you 18.1 on the other. Is that right?
No, sir, it should be the 15-foot setback in the rear, and we're 14.
That's right. 15 foot. I'm sorry.
Yes, sir, the front is 20.
So you asked them for a 8-inch?
9.6 inch.
8/10 of a foot, 9, yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
8/10 of the foot on the,
rear setback.
and you're good, we just say the house, footprint of the house.
I'm sorry?
We're good if we just include it to be the footprint of the house. You're good with that?
Yes.
You're not gonna spend any?
No, we're not, no. That's it, just to, kind of, to keep us from having to tear the house down and redo it.
Any questions? Have a seat there. We'll call you back in a minute. Mr. Stephen, what do you think? Tear the house down? Burn it?
Good evening, Stephen Schoen, Planning and Development Services. If I could have the staff report entered in the record,
enter.
please. Thank you. If I could just, well, I'll start with saying that the hardship or criteria of the code have not been satisfied, but let me address comments from the board from the last meeting, if I could. While staff understands that surveying errors have been historically viewed by the board as a hardship upon the property owner inflicted by the surveyor, the code has not yet incorporated language providing for surveying errors as a reason for variance approval. Let it be known that staff empathizes with the property owner in general when a mistake like this has occurred. However, this particular home appears to remain under the developer's ownership and not as under the individual homeowner. And that homeowner is not burdened by this mistake or surveying error. I just wanted to get that on record. I hope you can
We appreciate your
understand and
comment.
appreciate it. Very good. Thank you.
You know, it'd be nice if someone could file complaints against these surveyors, and if they reach a certain amount of mistakes that comes before this board, then they're not allowed to survey, and so I guess your director would be willing to help us get that language in the code.
I think it would be an important addition, but I will not speak on my director's behalf at this point.
I understand. It is annoying that, you know, and Lord knows, you know, we try to hold them. Sometimes if it's just deliberate, we've made them tear them down before.
Yes, sir.
So go ahead.
That is all I have. If you have questions of me, I'm certainly here to answer them.
maybe we need to keep a log of which surveyors create these problems, and then, I'm serious, and then if it's repetitious, like Mr. Volker, then we need to, some way, which, you know, after the fact, it's hard to do that, but, I don't know. I agree. Thank you. Anyone from the audience have anything to say? Mr. Isaac, you have anything you want to add? Come back up here, sir, please. How many houses y'all build in Walden County?
This year we'll build probably 400, right around 400.
I've been averaging that for,
No, it's, we took it, there's a spike this year.
average 200 a year.
230, yeah.
And
yeah.
this is, to my understanding, maybe the second one that y'all been before us?
Correct.
I think there's one on 20th Street a couple of years ago. Not 20, but Highway 20 up in that area.
That would be before.
So did y'all try real hard to make sure your surveyors play within the boundaries they're supposed to?
We do, and, you know, we try to do we want to do a form board survey on all, which would catch a lot of that, and, this one just got through the cracks, and, we
Are
don't.
these surveyors somebody that you think you can talk to make sure this is not repetitious?
Absolutely, yep. And we have talked to them about how they send us their plots, so that we're, you know, again, it was different, it's a different, from Butler is who we used before, and, so when you get used to using somebody, you just, you know, but we have had that conversation with them, and we are on track and on the same page now.
Good. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Motion close the public discussion.
Motion to close.
Close.
Second.
Second.
Motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the variance as requested for a 14.2 setback in the rear.
And tie it to the survey. Second. Discussion.
I think it's pretty amazing, considering the volume of work that they do, that they're not here more often. And they derive no benefit from sliding this house 9 inches back on the lot. It's clearly an accident.
I agree. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Charlie, where you don't comment. Got your Variance. We appreciate you coming before us. Next item on the agenda.
Yeah.
That's it?
Minutes.
That's all we got?
Got the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Are you allowed to share with us, sorry, what's going on with the Kaiya variance before we hear?
Hang on a minute. Just hang on. Motion to approve the minutes, second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Now go ahead.
Are you allowed to brief us on what's
Yes.
happening?
Yes.
Since we had the documents and we've
yeah.
reviewed the documents,
He's got to be careful as well.
we're still we
He
haven't
knows that.
adjourned the meeting, so we're still
No,
in a
Mr. The hearing is a quasi-judicial hearing, and your decision has to be made on all information presented during the course of that hearing. So since we've continued it off to the May meeting, it wouldn't be appropriate for me to enter anything into the record where the opposing counsel wasn't available.
We're not asking to do anything in the record. What is it? Okay, we want to ask you.
Well, I mean, we were given all of the materials in the
Yeah.
binder,
And
so
What's their issue?
it's been disclosed.
I think the issue is, as outlined, there may be more issue, you know, some of these can kind of be moving targets where we thought we were asking for X, now we think we might want Y, or the board suggests something, but I would be reluctant to get into it because this is something that could likely be appealed. So as we always try to do, regardless whether we think it might be appealed or not, we want to mind our P's and Q's. We don't want to give anybody an opportunity to suggest that the staff or this board was somehow tainted, or the staff tried to taint the board. So I understand your concern, and it might streamline things, but that's, we just can't do
You
that.
did tell us that the property owner that's suing Kaiya is also appealing the decision that they wanted a 0 setback on.
Yeah, and I can send that information. I mean, that's public record. Again, I believe Mr. Hall has indicated that has nothing to do with the matters that are ongoing or that are going to be before this board. But yeah, I mean, I just wanted to let you know that, these parties have been before you before, and there's a current pending appeal on a different matter with Mitchell Brothers, Mr. Gilday, and
Interesting that they seem to be appealing the development order allowing Kaiya to build closer to their property line while themselves appealing the decision to be held to a setback on their side.
I don't suggest
just
to understand the
public
relationship and how that stuff is. It's very strange bedfellows, is what I'll say. Because as you recall, when you were looking at the variance for the property owner that lived outside of Kaiya, Mitchell Brothers was supposed to be doing some of the work on their property, and they were here kind of objecting, but then they said we weren't really objecting, and then they turned it into an objection. They had legal counsel here at that time, was not Mr. Gilday, but again, I mean, I don't, claim to know how, or it's a very odd situation, and looks like you're going to have some more in front of you, so.
Motion to
Adjourn?
adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
We do appreciate everybody coming.
We expect to see all of you